Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here. I've got my phone plugged into my laptop. I'm uploading videos, letting things charge, and reading my way through the pile. And this is going to kind of continue thoughts I'm thinking about from reading Samurai Jack by IDW and thinking it was hot trash. I said I was going to buy the rest. I changed my mind. I am not spending my money on this garbage. I love this character. I don't need to spend my money on trash just because it has his name in it. So, yeah, 20 bucks in my pocket. Thank you, Dark Billy. And then right after that, I read Darkwing Duck by Joe Books, and I liked a lot of aspects of it. Not a perfect comic, but really enjoyable, really nailed the heart of the character for me, and I dug that. So we're kind of continuing the theme of me trying to work my way through a bunch of comics I bought just because I like the characters. Those two really sparked a lot for me because I really hated Samurai Jack, and I really dug Darkwing Duck after reading Samurai Jack and I liked Darkwing Duck for a lot of the same reasons that I hated Samurai Jack, the comic that is, not the TV show. Okay, so this I also got the new DuckTales that's based on the new Cop Squad Disney XD show, and I'm liking a lot of this. This isn't sparking as many cylinders for me, so I think we're going to do some storybook time with Uncle Marmaduke fan, and I'll just point out the two or three interesting things I noticed. By the way, my background is a Ray Alba unused artwork for Mad Magazine that I don't even know if this is supposed to be Marmaduke, but something about it. I don't know, something about it. So tells me that this was made for this channel. I wish I could have afforded to get the original, but working on an art tutor budget here, guys. Anyway, so the new DuckTales show. This was one of the reasons that sparked me to go try to collect and check out the original Scrooge McDuck and Donald Duck comics. I'm kind of a fake geek guy on Scrooge McDuck. I'm really interested in the character. I've liked some comics and TV shows I've read with the character, but I'm not boned up on my history of the character. And when I went to buy up the Treasury editions of it, I accidentally bought the Don Rosa one instead of the Carl Barks one, which I'm okay with. I really enjoyed it. But I mentioned that book in my last video, but I didn't really say specifically what I was talking about. I kept saying Don Rosa introduction, Don Rosa introduction. I'm talking about Volume 1 of the Treasury edition of Don Rosa's Scrooge McDuck, Donald Duck comics. Go get those. Okay, so if you enjoyed those old comics, if you enjoyed the old DuckTales shows, I mean, the new DuckTales show is playing pretty hard on, nostalgia for the 90s. I'm not particularly nostalgic for the DuckTales show of the 90s. It's a fun little Disney cartoon. I don't have anything bad to say about it. It just wasn't my jam as a kid. I kind of enjoy it as an adult because I like animation. I like good animation. Disney delivers good animation. So, 2017 rolls around and I see they are doing a new bit on DuckTales, and I mostly enjoy it. There have been a few dopey episodes, but generally I think it's pretty good. Maybe a little laziness in the animation here and there, but man, great design. These are old characters. They've been drawn in several different ways. This is a fresh way of drawing the characters that feels like Scrooge McDuck and Donald Duck, but is maybe even more simplified and cuter than past versions of the characters. So it's distinct, it's got its own flavor, but it's still that solid underdrawing, solid emphasis on shape and line. I really dug the drawing for this. These are two mini stories, and the only thing I didn't like was there seemed to be certain passages where like there was a miscommunication between the artist and the writer about what was going on, or the writer was doing a try hard bit trying to evoke humor. Oh, man. And I was doing so good. I was trying to be so professional. Oh boy. Hold on. Okay, this must end. I must fix this. Man, I wanna get professional and like make really good videos on feminism just so I can look back at this time and laugh and say, see guys, you can do it too. You can refute feminists, you can refute SJWs and Marxists. Look at me, I'm in my closet. Okay, confession time. I keep all my art supplies in my closet, and that's where I've been filming most of this stuff and recording it, and it has a timed light. Anyway. Golly. All right, I'm letting too much of myself show here. Anyhow, all right, so, yeah, well drawn, really solid. Underdrawing. Okay, Delia Duck. Since I'm a fake geek guy on DuckTales, I don't know if they ever developed her at all in the old comics, and it feels like they're trying to do something with her. I think they're going to do something in the show where she either died or she's out of the picture, and that's why there's shade between Scrooge McDuck and Donald Duck. Summa spoiler them, by the way. I don't know if they're going to do that. I'm just guessing that based on Donald Duck raising the nephews and there being tension between the characters. I don't know. But their idea for the character seems to be that she's generic adventure girl, and, she'll give her brother Donald a hard time, but I don't know who she is yet. There's a bit later where Scrooge McDuck kind of compliments her and says, she takes after me more than Donald does, which feels like that could be something significant because, parents and Uncle Scrooge functioning as a father figure stand-in. Parents think a lot and talk a lot about how, this sibling or that sibling, are they more like their mom or are they more like their dad? Are they more like me in this respect or more unlike me in this respect? So having her kind of compare and contrast with Scrooge McDuck seems to be a good way of establishing her as her own character, but I still don't know who she is apart from generic adventure girl who's, like Scrooge McDuck, is kind of adventurous. But this was kind of fun where the chicken is starting to grow larger and larger, and Delia Duck has to play essentially Candy Crush to reveal the secret of the ancient temple. And Donald eats some cocoa beans, and he starts shrinking. And so then they figure out that they've got to shrink the chicken down in order to capture it. Okay. What didn't I really dig about it? There wasn't anything here where I thought the artist and writers were miscommunicating. I think that was in the second story. There were maybe just a few little try-hard gags in the dialogue, but man, I'm so happy with the drawing. I don't know if they're using assets from the show. If they are, I can't tell. It just looks like really good drawing. And I don't know who it was on Twitter that I follow who was sharing pics of this, but they kind of roasted this for their panel layouts, and I agree. So I'm sorry I forgot your Twitter handle, but the problem is there's lots of panels layered on top of each other, and they're not really using that for dramatic effect, where this is okay. I mean, they're just kind of layered on top of this big scene, but they'll have like little tight spots, and it creates tangents. This isn't the worst example. There was a worse example before, but they're doing a bit with the panels where they're not doing a bit with the panels for the purpose of telling the story and making the story big and impactful. It's like they're doing a bit for the sake of doing a bit of hey, let's do some wonky panels. Let's put this panel on top of that panel. That's weird. So I didn't really dig that, but man, the underdrawing, I'm really connecting with that. So here's the second story, and here's where I started noticing what I thought were miscommunications between the writer and artist. So we know that Donald Duck is trapped in ice for some reason, and Uncle Scrooge got an amazing sheep, and Delia got accepted as a Viking warrior, but we don't know exactly what's going on yet. In media res, so out we go into the desert. And all right, here's thing number one. So Scrooge McDuck says that sheep have been turning up like Chinese takeout in refrigerators all over Duckburg. Now, have sheep been turning up specifically in refrigerators all over Duckburg, or have sheep been turning up like Chinese takeout in refrigerators all over Duckburg? Okay, so are they all in refrigerators like that one, or hey, this one's at a conveyor belt in the grocery store? So it doesn't seem to be that they are specifically turning up in refrigerators. This one's in an ice truck. Later you find out that they have been showing up in refrigerators and cold places, and this art is not communicating that. There's a little ice cream bar there, but we have not had it communicated to us that the sheep are showing up specifically in refrigerators and freezers over Duckburg that well. He said they've been showing up in refrigerators, but we have a picture that is not in a refrigerator. This is an ice cream store. This isn't a refrigerator. This isn't a freezer. This was a miscommunication somehow between writer and artist. The editor should have caught it. But I'm still enjoying the drawing. It's cute. I've said that. Okay, here's miscommunication number 2. So Donald is drinking, and there's a sand waterfall there. And then Delia starts going underneath this sand waterfall, which looks like a little drizzle of sand, and it looks like she's just walking into a rock, and then boom, they see the Vikings. So what I think was supposed to happen here was there was supposed to be like a big waterfall of sand, and it was supposed to look like just a waterfall. And then Delia, being kind of the feisty, look before you leap one, runs right into it, and then they go through a cave, and then they come out and they find the hidden city. But what's happened is it looks like Delia just kind of runs underneath a sand thing into a rock, and then poof, they're there. Pacing and communicating what's going on. Okay, you ready? Because now 3 pages in a row, we're going to have a weird moment. So this Viking duck shows up, and one says they're going to learn our secret, and the other says they probably wouldn't know we had a secret until you opened your big mouth. And then Donald says that brawny big mouth must be the Viking version of Donald. So who is he talking to? Is he talking about just this guy here? Is he important? Is he just saying that Donald has a big mouth? Is he that's probably what it is looking back, but when you're reading it the first time, is this important? Is this an important person? Is this who he's talking about? So we're confused. Why is Scrooge McDuck making a comparison between Donald and these brawny Vikings? What's his intention? Reading this a second time is probably to say that Donald has a big mouth, but that was vague. Because that is vague, then the connection he makes is also vague, because his connection is that Delia takes after me a wee bit more, maybe a little too much. So, but if the point is Donald has a big mouth, what does that have to do with Delia being a badass action girl who'll go do kung fu with her stick on the Vikings? I don't know. So because this was not set up properly, the potential connection of creating a character moment for Delia falls flat. Delia goes to and does some kung fu action stuff with the Vikings, and this cute Beagle girl Viking shows up. Look at her. She's so adorable. I just want to pinch her little cheeks. If I were a weirdo auntie in a SJW Marvel comic, that's the type of thing I would do. Anyway, a lot of white space at the bottom there, and not particularly for an artistic effect at all. All right, so the sheep are actually giving off refrigeration, and so the Vikings need them to survive in the desert. And these magic sheep were apparently charged in a silver star. We don't know what that is exactly. It's not quite explained. All right, here's a bit of maybe where the panel layout is somewhat confusing, but it's saved. All right, so you're supposed to read it left, right, down. Now that's pretty normal, left, right, and then you go down. The reason this might become confusing is a larger panel next to 2 little panels. If it's massive, if it was much bigger than this, you would want to read these 2 panels first, because you kind of connect them in your mind as, okay, these 2 go together, and then big giant thing next. Now what I think saves this so I'm saying this was almost confusing, but it's not confusing. The reason why is the words are placed right here. So you go down here, up here, down, and then that way. The reason that's a little awkward is you're going left to right, and then you got to go right to left again. So this wasn't the most offensive example I saw of weird vertical panel layout. Maybe even here, right? So there's just a little gap between this and that. So top panel, these 2 bottom panels, you're supposed to read left, right. But this little gap here, it's wonky. Okay, so why is that there? Are you supposed to read that after you read this? Well, okay, you do end up reading it left to right normally. It's just a little weirdness of the panel composition that's adding a little... It's potentially adding confusion. It didn't end up confusing me and making me wonder what I should read next. I did read it correctly the first time, but it's goofing around with the panels when you don't really need to goof around with the panels. So they set up a giant Stonehenge of freezers to recharge the sheep, and the Vikings make some comment that they visited England and thought Stonehenge was mini golf. It's kind of tee-hee random humor. There we go. Okay, tee-hee random humor. Zach's talked about this in several videos, and I had a brainstorm, which is that in Monty Python, the tee-hee random humor works because they don't just do a random joke. They take a random idea and they push that random idea to the extremes. So the Department of Silly Walks sketch is about John Cleese being a government bureaucrat who does a silly walk. And someone's trying to patent a silly walk, and they have a whole conversation about how silly a walk has to be before you can patent it. right? So the reason it's funny isn't just because, well, yeah, it's funny because they do silly walks, and silly walks are funny, but the reason it works as a form of random humor is they're taking a silly idea and they're saying, what if there were a government department of silly walks, and they had a mundane conversation about the paperwork around silly walks. They're taking the random idea in a crazy direction. Most of the humor of this book is, you know, just it's random because it's random, and we said something kind of silly and random. You need to build the idea and push it to its conclusion. Oh, the art is saving this. If this was a lesser artist, or if this was an artist who wasn't even attempting the Disney style, this would have been really cringy and unappealing. Just the sheer adorableness and the strong line work of this artwork really saved this comic for me. So this is kind of interesting, where they're missing a sheep and they have to push for some reason they need 100 things. So Scrooge just pushes Donald in, and he's the replacement for the 100th sheep. Okay. That's kind of that's kind of a badass thing for Uncle Scrooge to do. Yeah, he's a cantankerous old bird. It works. Anyway, yeah. So, come on, editors, catch these things. So they need to stop doing weird bits about panel layouts. Look at that. That's like almost like a swastika kind of a thing going on. Don't have that. We don't need that. All right, but really strong underdrawing, really cute drawing sensibility, and how the characters are designed. And okay, like, I'm not doing like SJW, IDW cringe over this. I'm seeing really strong drawing with a few little annoying things tacked on, but I'm happy with the new show generally, and I'm happy with this comic adaptation generally. So I'm gonna go try to pick up more. I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. Love you guys. Catch you later.